Hey everyone, it's Eric Jensen again, here for another, rambling and weeks of Jensen Sports Talk. So last week, college football begins again. It was pretty great to see college football games. Pretty great to see USC football. Pretty great that they won. And yet they were exactly the same as they always are under Clay Helton. And despite having won 30-7, they looked pretty mediocre in the process of winning that. I mean, when you go 50 minutes without scoring an offensive touchdown in the game, it's a little bit frustrating. The defense looked good, though. Defense looked real good. It's just the offense is just a jumbled mess with no consistency, I don't know what it is. I mean, they try and beat you with individual talent and trying to find a good scheme in there, and there just isn't one. It's frustrating, but they did win. Better to be frustrated and win than be frustrated and lose, I guess. So they've got the win. And there's a lot of other good games. I do want to say my first topic to talk about is the polls. And I don't think there should be any polls here in the beginning of college football. At the earliest, you should have a poll maybe in like October, because it's just hard to tell whether the teams are, how good they are. Did they play a good team, or did they play someone we thought was a good team? Did they, it's just, I think, and then of course you can't pass someone up in the rankings if they were ahead of you and they won, even if you're a better team later in the season. But the only reason why some teams may be in the rankings is because they were ranked there to begin with, not necessarily that they're a better team. So if I had my way, just get rid of it. For example, in evaluating these wins, I mean, it's hard to tell after 1 week. Like the UCLA LSU game, for example, UCLA looked great. They crushed LSU in their sissy blue uniforms, and yes, they are that. Coach O was right, despite the fact that he couldn't beat UCLA, unfortunately, but they are sissy blue uniforms. But what am I saying? LSU. Do we know for a fact that UCLA is really good this season? I think they are going to be good this season. I think they're going to be a very strong team. But do we know that? LSU could be awful. What happens if LSU wins like 4 games this season and are just garbage? Then that win doesn't actually look all that great, even though it's, SEC West team, LSU, 2 years ago they won the national championship, blah, blah, blah. But if they're not a good team, then it really doesn't mean much, which is why you shouldn't, one, evaluate anything too strongly on 1 week, and 2, there should be no polls right now. If we would just hold off on the polls until after at least a month of games, it would be so much better, and you could get a more accurate representation of where teams should be, rather than this, they've been ranked here, so I'm going to keep them there. Anyways, the Pac-12 North looked just like garbage. And this is another hard thing that I think the Pac-12 is going to have the hardest time with, and that they didn't have last season to develop. I mean, some teams played like 2 or 3 games, and that was it. And the most anyone played, I think, was like 5 or 6. It was a completely lost year. So, with Washington losing and looking just awful against Montana, I mean, I think part of that is because they lost a year. with the COVID, and then the Pac-12 was too much babies to actually play last year. Anyways, that I mean, yeah, the Pac-12 North just looked awful though. Oregon just scraping by Fresno State. I mean, and everyone else losing. Yeah, not good out on the West Coast in the Pac-12 at least. The South looked decent. They for the most part they did pretty okay. Arizona even looked okay against BYU, even though they lost. But yeah, just and then which brings me to another just side rant that I'll bring up right now. Is that a couple weeks ago, I was listening, and Paul Feinbaum, the SEC guy for ESPN, he was talking about the alliance and whatnot, and was, whatever. I mean, and he was pumping up the SEC, as he should. They are the best football conference right now. There isn't any debate on that, I don't think. But he went on to insult the Pac-12, saying how garbage they were, and without mentioning like the ACC or something. And to me, like, you've got to look at more than just one top team in the conference when evaluating a conference. The ACC has had more success, you could say, in the playoff era because they have Clemson. But other than Clemson, they have no one. Their conference is such garbage that, I mean, it's just a cakewalk. I mean, Clemson, despite losing to Georgia, is going to most likely, I mean, you never know what's going to happen, but most likely they're going to have a cakewalk into the playoffs because the ACC is garbage. And while the Pac-12 hasn't had one of those top teams, primarily because USC has been awful, the conference itself has been a decent and better conference than something like the ACC. Anyways, that was just a side rant. Let's get on to, I guess, previewing this next week. Next week's big games, we've got Oregon and Ohio State. Oregon going there, like I said, they didn't look good. And I think we've got one thing here where Oregon, I think they'll keep it close, but Ohio State will pull away and win comfortably in the end. I think Ohio State is a class above Oregon right now, so they'll probably win by a couple touchdowns, I would guess. We've got Texas A&M and Colorado. I think the Aggies will probably win big. I don't think Colorado's all that great. So look for Texas A&M to win big there. We've got Cal at TCU. Again, I think Cal is taking a step back. They were looking like they were improving there a couple years ago. I don't think that improvement is going to continue. So look for TCU to win by 10 to 14 points, I would guess. We've got the big one, Iowa and Iowa State. I don't believe in Iowa State all that much. I know they've been, the top 10 this year, and they did so good last year. I don't have much faith in them. I think Iowa's going to win, and probably pretty comfortably. Iowa over Iowa State. We've got Washington, Michigan. Side note here, the very first football game I can remember ever seeing on TV was the Washington, Michigan Rose Bowl, in which Washington won the national championship back in the early 90s. So I have a good memory. I don't know what the play was, but it seemed like a Washington guy either intercepted it. It could have been just him getting a punt. I mean, I was pretty little. And then he just seemed to run through all the Michigan guys. I remember thinking that was so cool. However, Washington looked awful against Montana. I think they're better than that. I think they'll play better, but I do think Michigan is going to be a lot better this year. So I think Michigan will probably pull away and win by a touchdown. I'd say about 7. I think Washington will keep it close though throughout, but look for Michigan to win that one, I think. We've got Utah and BYU, the Holy War. BYU, they looked okay, I guess. I mean, they're replacing everyone, so I think that's part of what happened against Arizona. I think they'll look a lot better this week against Utah. I mean, Utah, you can't take much from their win against Weber State. So I think BYU is actually going to break the streak. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win by over a touch. Well, no, I think they'll win really close at the end. Maybe a last-second field goal by a point or so. But I do think BYU is going to win. I think BYU is a better team. Let's see. And then, of course, the biggest game, the best and the biggest of the week, Stanford visiting USC. I have no faith in Stanford. Stanford looked awful against Kansas State. USC, while they didn't look good, their defense looked good, and I think their defense will continue to dominate. I think we'll see the defensive line get multiple sacks. I think we'll probably have some turnovers, and this is me crossing my fingers and being optimistic here. I think we'll target more than one wide receiver this next game. Maybe we'll spread it around, maybe have 4 wide, play like an air raid, since that's what we supposedly have. And I do think USC is going to win comfortably. I don't think it'll be close. I think it'll be by more than 21 points or about 21 or more points. So look for the Trojans to look actually good. Like I said, I think the schedule for USC is looking, really good for them. They should do really good. I think they'll go right through the schedule, win the Pac-12, and then get to someone that actually is really good, like an Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, those class of teams, in which case they'll get completely embarrassed in the playoff and lose by probably about 40 points. But I think they will get to the playoff, and they still should fire Clay Helton after that. Because we're just not good. I think with our schedule, we'll do all right. But anyways, we'll see what else. Big storylines. NFL is starting this week, so we'll see if anything interesting happens there to talk about. Oh, I was going to talk about one other thing real fast. COVID, because we had Lane Kiffin missed the game with Ole Miss, and we had our guy, Isaiah Polomal. I can't pronounce anyone's name, but anyways, he missed the game against San Jose State with health and safety protocols. And so here's my crazy take on COVID. I'm again, this is not for anything but football. So, to get your vaccines or not, do whatever you want. I don't care. Take care of yourselves. But for football, I think it would be so much better. And instead of making people sit out, or in the NFL, they're going to not let people play for 10 days so people can miss 2 games. Same thing with college, people missing games. It's going to have an effect. And I think the solution is just to not test anyone. And if you're sick, then don't play and get tested, get better. If you're not, who cares? And these guys are healthy. Nothing's going to happen. We should be treating it like the flu. I'm not saying the COVID is the flu, but I think we should treat it like that. We never stopped anything for the flu before. I don't think we should stop anything for COVID. It's here. It's going to always be here. People are always going to get it, whether they're vaccinated or not, as we've seen. So just don't test anyone, and let everyone play. Ignorance is bliss. In my opinion, that is the best policy for COVID in sports. Maybe not for everywhere in life, but in sports, I think ignorance is bliss. Don't test anyone, just let everyone play and call it good. I don't think there's much else going on. We've got some international soccer World Cup qualifying. U.S. has another big game. Hopefully they can win tonight. And hopefully USC does good, beats the Stanford Cardinal, and we'll talk next time.